very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dr. Zubin Marolia, and I'm going to present my work in India in medical practice and in healing stories that I've seen patients over the last 28 years. And this is a concept, the 3S concept, which I have formed and which I use in my practice when I go on a healing journey with every patient. So every patient has a story, and every person has a journey. And it's very important in medicine to know that journey. I quote one of the very beautiful quotes of Sir William Osler, who had mentioned that it is always more important to know what kind of person has the disease than what kind of disease is there in a person. So I begin my presentation of my work in India. I bring you warm greetings from my country and my family. So we have suppression, spontaneity, and a free spirit. It's so very important. Every person, every patient that I see, I try and look for these 3 S's in each case history session. We begin with the heavy S, a very heavy S, the S of suppression. I'm sure most of you know that when you are in a gathering, in a family, and you have a new person who enters the room with sadness on his face, how heavy the room becomes. And you have a child that comes running in the room, being fully spontaneous, and the room lights up. There is warmth, and there is lightness in the room. So let's begin with what are emotions? Emotion. Emotion in their natural state are energy in motion. Having a path of movement, they flow in and through our bodies with relative ease. The flow is through the psycho-neuroendocrine axis, which Dr. Josh and Dr. Chris were mentioning this morning. And any energy has to be either transformed into lighter energy or released. And each time in our lives, as we know, as we meet people, we face with an ebb and flow of emotions. Suppression. I'm sure every one of you has experienced all of these S's. So my job over here is to make you understand what is important for healing amongst these 3 S's. Suppression, the deliberate act of trying to force the unwanted information out of your awareness, a type of motivated forgetting. A paradoxical and rebound effect occurs. Suppression might actually produce the very thought it is intended to stifle, and thus leading to preoccupation of that thought. We all know culturally it's considered stoical to hold in our more tender emotions, and not showing vulnerability is typically viewed as a demonstration of character. But in reality, the major motives in hiding our emotions are fear-based, as we are just afraid to look weak or susceptible to others. Many a times I have a cell phone in my hand, and it's a very, very high-end cell phone, and I don't know how to operate the cell phone, and I'm trying to find my way, and I look foolish, and I look stupid, and I look vulnerable. And I face that situation of being vulnerable, and I hand over the cell phone to my person. I said, go ahead. I'm vulnerable. I'm showing it. I don't know how to operate the cell phone. Please show me the way. It's as simple as that. Unashamedly disclosing our vulnerability can actually be a deliberate personal statement of both sensitivity and courage. And here I take you to a conference I did in Brazil 2 years ago, wherein I spoke on healing stories. And in those healing stories, I spoke on a topic of the 2 V's, being vulnerable and being validated. So each time that you feel inferior, you experience a gamut of emotions and you feel vulnerable, it's very important in that setting to find validation. Because the moment you find validation, the suppression will be lesser. But if you feel vulnerable, you feel inferior, and in your life you don't have a person to validate you, the suppression goes at a much deeper level. So this was the concept of the 2 V's, which I discussed in Brazil, on being vulnerable and being validated. So what and why? Why do we suppress ourselves? These are the emotional states that everyone experiences in their lives, whether it is self-esteem, anxiety, shock, fear, love, guilt, and humiliation. Many years ago, when I was working on mistletoe therapy and using mistletoe for cancer treatment in India and all over the world, I was working in a clinic, and a beautiful lady walks up to me, and she was working in the same group, and she says, "Give me your hand." So I'm a bit taken aback. I gave her my hand, and she writes down, "I love you." So she is my beautiful wife today. and that was so spontaneous, and I replied back. It took me a few moments to gather myself, but she is with me today, and hi, Benaz. So molecules of emotion, emotional expression is always tied to a specific flow of peptides in the body, the chronic suppression of which results in a massive disturbance of the psychosomatic network. Early studies by Lydia Temoshok, a psychologist, showed that cancer patients who kept emotions such as anger under the surface had slower recovery rates than those who were more expressive. Recent studies, also done at Stanford, have convincingly shown that being able to express emotions like anger and grief can improve survival in cancer patients. So we have honest emotions and we have positive emotions. Anger, fear, and sadness, the so-called negative emotions, are as healthy as peace, courage, and joy. To suppress these emotions and not let them flow freely is to set up a disintegrity in the system. And this is very, very important to understand, that this creates a stress which takes the form of blockages of your vital energy, and disease starts at the site of the blockage. The biggest impetus to healing can come from jump-starting the immune system with a burst of long-suppressed anger being spontaneous. So we come to my favorite S, the S of spontaneity, and the S of me running and jumping in a swimming pool. Ladies and gentlemen, when was the last time you did something for the first time? Spontaneous thoughts are often considered as wanderings of a restless mind, and we often tend to dismiss these spontaneous thoughts. However, being the output of a broad category of uncontrolled and inaccessible higher-order mental processes, they reveal particularly meaningful self-insight. Conversely, these random thoughts exert a greater impact on judgment than do similar deliberate thoughts. And that's what our instinct is all about. You have to have that instinct, and you have to know the spontaneity behind the instinct. And what better way to describe spontaneity than being a child? To have a certain childlike attitude. How many of us unashamedly show that we are a child in day-to-day lives? As we know, motion unleashes emotion. Unhealed wounds are stuck energy in our body. Hence, motion releases these energetic blocks from our body. When you act in the moment, and it has no reference to your past, the action has a beauty, a purity, the same as a small child's act. A child is surrendered to his nature. He is not trying to control his life, and hence his responses are uncalculated and spontaneous. I bring you short cases that I've seen in my medical practice. cancer patients and other patients as well, wherein we've used homeopathy, Bach flower therapy, and mistletoe therapy in their treatment, each time identifying the 3 S's of suppression, spontaneity, and being a free spirit. The first case is Mrs. DK, 66-year-old lady with breast cancer, and she had come to us, and she was sitting in front of me, and she would say, "I have lost the will to live." And throughout her entire healing journey, throughout her entire healing story, she mentioned she had suffered a lot of grief due to her son's failed marriage, an emotional drain due to prolonged efforts on her part to avoid the breakup. Homeopathy, Bach flower therapy, and mistletoe therapy was used, and the homeopathic remedy was Ignatia 1M, the Bach flower therapy was gorse, and mistletoe helixor injections were given to her. The current status that she is overall having a sense of well-being, the breast pain, etc., is 50% better. She has better energy, better mobility, and she is managing her household activities well. It's another case of a low-grade serous adenocarcinoma of the ovary. It's a very interesting lady. She works in our support group in Mumbai. And she says, "I have been so harsh on myself. I must prove to myself in life. In this journey, I feel I have been pursuing something constantly. I have very few peaceful and emotionally fulfilling moments. And this was because of a very strong parental control of her father. I wish she would stand near the swimming pool and run and jump in the pool. What we say as jump-starting the immune system. And the remedy that was given in homeopathy was the element palladium. And in the current status, just before I traveled to the United States, she comes up to me and I ask her, "How do you feel?" It's very important to ask a patient how you are feeling. Leaving the stack of reports aside, the lab work aside, just tell me how you are feeling. And she says, "There is a rewiring inside me, sense to let go and surrender, and no longer lives in the fear of recurrence." A free spirit of letting go is again so very important in our lives. And when I met Tai in Bangkok, we were discussing about our work. And each time that I travel abroad, each time that I'm very happy, each time that I'm spontaneous, this is what I do. And this was exactly what Tai and I did in Bangkok, and that's how I think this posture was what made us friends. A free spirit to do what you want to do in your life. To feel, to know, and to do it. This is a beautiful slide wherein we are explaining when you have a water-filled balloon in your hand, the instinct is to grab it as it rolls from side to side. But in doing so, one finds that the overstuffed balloon pops out and the control is lost. The only way to gain control over an unsteady balloon is to release one's fingers, slowly open the hand, and let go of the tight grip. Lose control to gain control. Strongly applicable to letting go of our thoughts.